Hello, Internet! Welcome to Two and a Half Brains. This is our weekly discussion of the latest episode of Survivor Season 43, Episode 9. We're going to talk all about it, break it all down here. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss anything. You can like our Facebook page, facebook.com/PaymerProductions. You can email the show directly, paymerproductions@gmail.com as well. You can share the post, tell your friends, and everything else. We're getting this one out a lot later than we usually do, based on the fact that we were on vacation this past week. So obviously we did plan to get this one out later than we normally do. But definitely subscribe so you get everything when we do get it out. We're going to try to get the next episode out. We won't get it out right away. Either we'll probably try to get it out on Friday or Saturday of this week. So a couple shows coming out here in the next few days. So definitely subscribe so you don't miss anything. And we'll go ahead and get started here. It's going to be just me this week and probably next week as well. And then we'll have Jessica back on probably for episode 11. Getting close to the end, though. Kind of surprised. It feels like season just started. And now it's only a couple episodes left until the finale. So it's going pretty quick. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss anything. We'll dive in here in just a moment. And like I said, paymentproductions@gmail.com, facebook.com/paymentroadprod as well. And obviously we'll get Amazing Race coverage out as well. I think, I haven't watched it yet, but it looked like the episode for this past week was also a first half of a mega leg. If that is the case, then we'll just watch it and then record a little bit larger, longer episode for both episodes together around our normal time. Obviously, we're going to be still a little bit behind, but we're going to try to get caught up here by the weekend. So, and then get back on our normal schedule for next week. So be sure to subscribe so you don't miss anything, and we'll dive in here. We'll start with three most that mattered, as we always do, and we'll move to the Who Did Not Survive. This is a double episode, so we'll talk about Who Did Not Survive both times. And then we'll, of course, talk about the top three and the bottom three for the week. It'll be a little tougher this week for that because there's two unanimous votes. Two votes that were, could go either way. And so it was very interesting. Very interesting. Two votes that could go either way. Or two votes that were unanimous. So it's hard to say really who did great and who didn't do well. But there's a couple people who really stepped up this week. And then other people who have been doing well throughout the season. And we'll talk about them as well. So let's go ahead and start with here the three most that mattered. And we'll start with moment number one. One becomes two. So, two tribes usually become one. We've had a couple times where two tribes become three. In this case, one tribe becomes two, the unmerge once again. Third time in a row they did it. They like doing this now around the final 10, dividing it up into two tribes and doing two separate tribal councils, one person with immunity, so 4 options for each tribe. And I do like it. The twist does hurt the majority alliance, which makes the game more interesting. It does add a little bit of randomness to it, though, as well, which is maybe good, maybe bad, depending on your perspective. But once again, two tribes. So the merged tribe splits randomly into two tribes, and so there's a tribal council for each tribe. Each tribe has a person with immunity, and then the winning tribe, the person so of the 5, whoever outlasts 5 wins immunity, and then whoever outlasts the other the total, whoever's the last one standing overall of all the players wins reward for their team as well as immunity. So obviously, they win. This case it was peanut butter and jelly, and they have to go to tribal council last to see what happened at the first tribal. Go from there. So this week, Carla pulled it off for her team, and Cody won for his team. So those were the two people who won immunity, and that set up the two tribal councils for this week. So after the split, it came down to it was Sammy, Owen, Noel, and Carla and James on the one side, and then the other side was Jesse, Cody, Ryan, Cassidy, and Gabler. and that was the 2 split. Obviously, Cody won versus Ryan, and then won overall as well, so they got to go tribal last. Whereas Carla won for her team, but didn't win the reward as well. So either way, so they go to the tribal council and they split up into different beaches and everything like that, so you can decide who they want to vote out and everything like that. And they'll get to communicate with each other anymore after the tribal council. So we'll see what happens with it. So we'll see what happens with that. Obviously, they have no way to communicate with each other, so it's not like, hey, let's both vote out the same person, or it's agree, whatever. It's they're 2 separate tribes making 2 separate decisions. Moment matter number 2 here is the use of knowledge is power. So obviously, knowledge is power is something that's said a lot. It's a very common phrase, and sometimes it's modified to say the use of knowledge is power. Because knowledge is power is great, but if you have just a bunch of knowledge, you don't know how to use it, then it doesn't really, you can't gain any power with it. So in this case, the use of knowledge is power. So it's James had the knowledge is power advantage, but he never used it. And it's kind of a useless advantage anyway. I really don't like it. It hasn't worked out at all, anybody using it. And the only thing it really did this season, which was unique, is it made everybody kind of shift around their idols. And everybody had different idols in different spots. And, Dwight took Janine's idol, and then Dwight gave it to Jesse, and then yada, yada, yada. And then Dwight gets voted out, and so things got shifted around because they knew that James had the knowledge power advantage. They wanted to make it hard for him to find out who has the advantage. And he never ended up using it, and so that was part of it. And also, well done by Noelle, I guess, this week. We'll talk about that a little more here a little later on with Noelle and with Owen, how Owen kind of reacted to it, and James as well. But they knew that they knew that James could steal an advantage. He knew Noelle had it, as far as it seems pretty obvious that he had it. That he knew he had it, or she had it. So he might have even known that Carla had an idol. I'm not 100% sure if he knew that, which would have made sense for him to steal that one. But Noelle decided, hey, let's neutralize this knowledge power advantage, and make sure James doesn't use it and steal somebody's advantage. So we'll talk about that a little more here in detail. But obviously, if you have this advantage, using it is important. And with so much open information, so many open secrets, if you will, about who has what advantage, it's making things a lot harder for the players to, or I guess the player with it, keeping advantages a secret can be a huge thing. I mean, some people know that Jesse has Cody's advantage, or Cody's idol. Some people might know that. But nobody knows that Jesse has 2. Like, nobody knows it. Cody doesn't even know it. So, having stuff that nobody knows about is tough to do in this game. And, and obviously everybody knew James had the knowledge of power. So, using the advantages like that is helpful when you can use it effectively. But obviously, if you have the advantage, you don't know how to use it or don't know when to use it. Timing is very important. In this case, it didn't work out because James didn't use it, didn't know how to, and obviously everybody knew he had it, and so they were able to shift things around and kind of neutralize a little bit. If people know, I always say this: knowledge is important, but having advantage is important. But sometimes having knowledge is even more important, and the knowledge and power advantage is another one of those things, right? So everybody knows, this person has an idol, this person has an advantage, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes knowing that is more important than actually having it yourself, because you can work around it if you know it exists and who has it. So, third moment that matter here is unanimous. Double is 2 unanimous votes. So it is kind of rare. Obviously, tribes of 5, maybe not as rare, but 2 for both the votes to be 4-1 votes. Obviously, there's a shot in the dark, which hasn't even come up yet. Nobody's even used it this season. It's barely been a factor. Obviously, you do want to have a blind side. It does make it more advantageous to have a blind side when you know that is in the game, right? The knowledge of power, or the shot in the dark is in the game, because somebody can use it and screw things up. But in this case, it was 4-1 on James and then 4-1 on Ryan. So the people who got voted out all, just completely, if they weren't completely blindsided, then it was at the very least they were up against it, and they had nobody, nobody, broke ranks to vote with them. And it's kind of funny because it was a alliance of 7, and the alliance of 7 really didn't do much. The alliance of 7, I think, as far as I can tell, they voted out 2 members of their own alliance. Because I think the only ones who weren't in the alliance were Noelle, Sammy, and Gabler, or Noelle, Owen, and Gabler, I think. Not 100% sure. But that was where, the 2 votes, both being unanimous, is pretty interesting. And it doesn't happen all that often. Especially, again, you get down to a 4, a tribe of 4, or a tribe of 5, a little more likely. But even for both of them to go 4-1, especially both, turning on members of their own alliance, pretty interesting. Pretty interesting turn of events. So, let's talk about who did not survive this week. So 2 did not survive this week. First was James. And James obviously was a big threat. He was very close with Carla, a duo with Carla. And, he again, it's one of those things where Carla is close with everybody. James was close with Carla. So, when the James name came up, Sammy wanted to take out James. Carla was fine with, was not really fine with it, because James is her close ally, but she has more other allies. Now, if if roles were reversed, and it would come up to James and said, "Hey, James, we want to take out Carla," I think, somebody else would have worked with Carla to protect Carla, because, for example, Carla was James' really only number 1 ally, right? Whereas if Carla loses James, well, she's got a close relationship with Sammy, close relationship with Jesse, close relationships with Cassidy. So really, she's got other options, whereas James really didn't. He was pretty much, aligned with Carla, and for somebody who, he was in control of the game, but Carla's way more control of the game, and James was out front. James was out front, and Carla was like, slipping behind him. So she was fine with, letting, if they want to take out James, well, that's fine. That's a shield for her, but she still, has other options, and, he's the one putting himself out front. If somebody's going to get clipped, it's going to be him, because he's the one who looks overtly to be running the game, and so he takes the hit. Whereas Carla can kind of stay behind on the radar. And James also, it was a good move by Noelle, and we'll talk about that again a little more later on here, but they really wanted to make sure that James didn't use his knowledge of power and didn't use any advantage he could have had a shot in the dark or anything, because Noelle used her steal vote to steal Owen's vote. And so the plan's like, hey, we're going to steal Owen's vote, that way he can't use a shot in the dark because he doesn't have a vote to risk. And that way he's going to go out 5-0 is what they told James. We're going to vote him out 5-0. We'll steal his vote, so that way he can't use the shot in the dark and save himself. He's got no options. Can't even vote. And that convinced James that, okay, good, Owen's going. I don't have to worry about it. And then Noelle did all that just to use Owen's vote to vote out James as a blindside. So Owen would have voted for James anyways, but maybe James would have used his advantage or played his shot in the dark. But obviously it flipped around onto James like that, and that's a big reason why he got knocked out of the game. As for Ryan, I think it's a little more simple. I mean, the vote itself, it was between Cassidy and Ryan, 2 members of the blue team, and they said, Jesse and Cody were kind of running the vote, and obviously they brought in Gabler, and so they were going to decide who was going out. Obviously, the 2 of them were going to vote for each other. Obviously, Cassidy and Ryan were going to vote for each other, so it's a matter of who do the other 3 vote for that will make it 4-1. And they kind of said, like, hey, we're going to wait and see what happens with this vote. If the blue team decides to split up their own alliance, if the big alliance of 7 decides to split itself up, then maybe we'll go with Cassidy. If the alliance stays strong, then we'll go with Ryan, whatever, kind of go from there. They came in, they saw that James got voted out, so it seemed to kind of look like, okay, that gives them the okay to vote out Cassidy, and hurt Carla some more. But I think they kind of had their mind made up that it was going to be Ryan, and they didn't decide not to change it. They didn't want to, rock the boat too much at that point, so they decided just to stick with it. So I think that's kind of, I'm guessing that's what they did. I really can't say for sure, but I'm thinking that's what they did. 'Cause I didn't see anything else that indicated anything else. But for Ryan, it was, it came in between Cassidy and Ryan. Cassidy's a threat, and she's close with Carla and everything else. Ryan's not really close with anybody. He's just a nice guy. And I think, and obviously they voted him out, and they said, we're going to have trouble eating now. I think that's what Cody said. And then Ryan said, well, it's on you now, Cody, to feed them. So, really nice kind of words up the door and everything like that, too. So, all that is good. Why Ryan, though, right? So, I think the biggest thing is, you can take out the threat of Cassidy, or you can take out Ryan. And for me, it really came down to, hey, Carla already lost an ally. We don't know how or why, but let's not double dip and knock out another of our ally, especially because Jesse wants to work with Carla still, right? And that's that would be part of his reasoning why he decided who he wanted to go with, whether it was gonna be James or whether it was gonna be Ryan or whether it was gonna be Cassidy, and he want to see how Carla was gonna feel. And for me, I think it was very simple. I think it came down to, hey, we could get rid of either one. Cassidy's a bigger move, but we're really going to piss off Carla. Ryan, nobody really cares about because he doesn't have any relationships because he spends all his day fishing and feeding the tribe. So I think that's really what it came down to. I think if they would have got rid of Cassidy, it probably would have been fine, especially knowing that Carla ultimately went against James because the votes were going there anyways. And that's the thing too, right? Carla could have saved James, but the votes were going there. It was going to be 3-2 either way. So she might as well get on board and make it 4-1. Whereas Ryan, I don't think anybody was going to put their neck out to save Ryan. And instead of Rock, it was kind of a, hey, we have to get rid of somebody. We don't want to get rid of Gabler because we want to work with him. So let's get rid of Ryan because it's not going to upset anybody. Because he didn't have anybody he didn't have really, who was Ryan's number one ally? He really didn't have one. The fishes, right? Because he spent all the time fishing. So biggest thing for Ryan is stop fishing and build some relationships. I like him. He's disabled with cerebral palsy and everything, and he said he'd never be able to walk. Now he's fishing, with Hawaiian Spear and on Survivor. Awesome, good for him. And he's a good dude, and he's a really nice guy. And I obviously Jessica's upset that her winner pick went out, but overall, I think she did. I think Ryan did didn't do a very good job socially. And even though he's a rootable guy and nice guy, he just didn't have any social game and no social capital to make any moves. He could have stayed in the game just by being so little of a threat, having such a low threat level. But at the end of the day, I think it really came down to, let's regroup with, we lost a member of the 7. Let's not lose another member of the 7. Let's just, go down the 6 here or whatever. Or, or even if it's a member of the 7, or a fringe member of the 7, let's just say. We'll kind of punt on this one and regroup with Carla and see what we want to do next time. Obviously, now the final 8, they can make a move and see what they want to do. Now there's a lot of moving pieces, so we'll see. So that's, I think, why Ryan got voted out. Just simply didn't have really anybody who's really going to be in his corner. Really didn't have any real allies. He was just kind of playing a solo game, just going out fishing, and that's great, but it's not going to win the game, obviously. I say all the time, the person who goes out fishing a bunch is somebody I would align with, so they can feed me, and then go to the end and beat them because they didn't make any moves, or if they get cut, they got to get cut, because it doesn't matter. They're not going to win the game anyways. So, that's what they did wrong. Switching gears, you want to talk about the top 3 and bottom 3, obviously, for each, obviously top 3 and bottom 3, as we do every week. And this one was tough because, it was a very unanimous vote. So it wasn't like anybody was like, oh my gosh, they were, on the wrong side of the vote. It was, the only people on the wrong side of the votes got voted out. Right? So that's kind of, where we ended up. But let's go and talk about the bottom 3, starting with bottom person number 1. In that case, it's going to be Owen. Because it was between Owen and James, and obviously they wanted to keep Owen in the game. And I think they want to keep Owen in the game for a couple reasons. One, he's not nearly as big of a threat as James. He doesn't quite have the social game or anything like that. he did okay in the challenges, all those things. But I don't think he's in a great position. I think he could really go in at any time, and nobody would really be too upset. Again, he's another one of those people who's connected to certain people who are connected to other people, right? So he's like, again, he's the one friend who calls, Sammy his best friend. Meanwhile, Sammy has like 4 other best friends. But Owen only has one best friend, that's Sammy, right? And that's kind of how I feel about Owen. Also, he talked about how he and Noelle and James back in one of the journey, back a few episodes ago, when Noelle got her, I think it was on episode 4 when she got her extra vote or her seal of vote, and the relationship with James was really, really soured. Obviously, he was really mad at James for telling him to vote a certain way, and and that wasn't the way that the vote was going. And he was really mad about that, and he kind of blew up the relationship with James over that, even though he was trying to build trust. And I see it from that perspective, but I also see it from James' perspective, because let's say somebody comes to you and they say, "Hey, I want to trust you, I want to work with you," and you're not sure if you can trust them. Well, if you're not sure if you can trust them, you're not going to bring them directly into the fold and say, "Here's who we're voting for, go ahead," and that way they can play it idle on that person and screw you, right? You tell them, "Hey, vote for this person," and they do that, and now they show that they're willing to vote the way you tell them to vote, and they're willing to work with you. So Owen got offended that he was not kept in the loop of who's actually being voted out. But again, if somebody you don't really know, don't really trust, ask you which way to vote, it makes sense to give them a name to vote for, so that way you know who voted that way. You know they're willing to vote the way you tell them to vote, and it also doesn't blow up the plan of who's actually going home. So I thought James actually played it pretty well. He didn't have enough tact, and that's why Owen got mad. But Owen getting mad also could have blown up his own game, because he could have worked with James. He could have got into that group. Who knows? Maybe he works with Owen, and they flip on somebody else, right? So it was maybe they go after Noelle or something, right? Because or whoever. Carla and Sammy and Owen go after Noelle because she's not really as connected either. So, I think that could have really been a mistake for him to get all upset over it, when he really should have just, been like, okay, well, they don't trust me fully yet. I'm not fully in the loop. And it's bad plan on James too for not having enough tact with that. Say, hey, look, and he tried to explain it later on, but, Owen was already upset and it didn't really go anywhere. So that was definitely a mistake on their part. And Owen didn't do a good job on that either. He doesn't have that many allies, and when somebody is like willing to somewhat kind of even peripherally or keep him at arm's length, but somewhat bring him in a little bit, you should be more open to working with that person. As for the the bottom 3, number 2, I have to go with Cassidy, just because she was the other option, I guess. She really didn't do anything wrong. I would say, though, it is not great to be targeted for being, part of a group or a duo or whatever, and being a big threat. Obviously, if you're going to get voted out, getting voted out for being a threat, I guess, is the way to go. Better than, being voted out for something else. And obviously, she survived the vote, so that's a good thing. But obviously, if she was in a really, really amazing spot, and obviously having allies helps keep you in the game. That's important. That's kind of what I was saying about Owen, and the problem with Ryan is he didn't have any allies to keep him in the game. Cassidy is connected to other people that can keep her in the game. But again, she was a target, and you never see. I mean, obviously Carla had immunity, so whatever. But you never see somebody like Carla or Jesse or Sammy being targeted. And obviously, so she's not. She's a threat because she was targeted, but she's not big enough threat where they said we have to take her out now. We can't let her get any further. So, not, as of right now, not a big enough threat to win the game. James going out is probably a good thing for her. It kind of gives, her more of Carla's attention. But again, I don't think she's in a good enough spot right now where, obviously, she's in a good enough spot not to get voted out yet, but she's not, I don't think, in a good enough spot to be like, if she goes to the end right now with she doesn't have the resume to win as of right now. So I gotta put her in the bottom 3 for just that reason. I guess. And then also in the bottom 3, I'm going to go with Gabler, just because he's kind of lost any momentum he's had. Obviously, a good challenge here or there, or a good, one move or one conversation even can switch things. But again, right now he was just kind of, looped in with that group, which is fine. Obviously, it's better than being kept out of the loop. Obviously, you don't want to do that. But at the same time, being kind of just that person who's just there and you don't really have any agency. You're just kind of being picked up and brought along. Is not somewhere you want to be either. So I have Gabler right now in the bottom 3 as well. So that's who's in my bottom 3. Let's go ahead and talk about the top 3 here. We're going in order this week, 3, 2, 1. Number 3 is Carla Still again. Again, more body of work as opposed to anything specifically this week. She did win immunity, which is nice. And she's not going to be considered a huge threat because she isn't really a physical threat. But had an endurance challenge, had a decently easy field because there wasn't anybody who was like really, a huge physical threat up against her. And so I think she did a good job. And again, Sammy thought enough of her to be like, hey, James is going. I want to let you know so you can vote with us, or so you don't feel blindsided. Like, she has enough of that relationship, with somebody like a Sammy, to have him come warn her, about James. And obviously, if she wanted to save James, she could have, or played her idol on him or whatever, But she decided, I'm gonna let it go, and she decided to jump out with the numbers because at that point, unless you're gonna save James, there's no point of voting, with him. There's no point of voting, throwing a random vote on somebody else. Unless you're gonna save him, might as well, vote with the majority and not have any dissenting votes. So she made the right decision on that for sure. The only thing that could have been better is if she saved her ally, saved James, whatever. But there's nobody else. There's really nobody who's like, obviously it was gonna be James or it was gonna be Owen. Owen, if it was gonna be James or like another huge threat, maybe she saves James and uses her idol that nobody knows about really to save him. But to save him just to get rid of Owens, like, okay, I saved a player who's a decent player in the game for someone who's got very little agency in the game. Making herself a big threat, keeping James in the game, and making herself a bigger threat than James, is not the right move. So I think she made the right move letting James go, and obviously she has good connection with everybody else, and that helped as well. So Carla's still in a really, really good spot, obviously. We'll see what happens. But again, nobody's really looking at her because she's just, she's just got good bonds with everybody, and I could totally see her winning. I know some people online don't really like her. I think she's fantastic. I think she's great. I love that. I love that strategic player who has good bonds and just does her thing. And obviously that's what player I love in the game. And Carla's doing a great job. For number 2 this week, I'm gonna go with Sammy. And again, it could have really it's kind of the same reason I went with Carla. Maybe just on the opposite side of it because Sammy had everything in. It had all the momentum. Obviously, he was gonna flip on James. Flip on the 7, which is maybe not something to do that early. Maybe you want to go another vote or 2 before you make that move. But since he was gonna do it, Noel had 2 votes. And it's if he's voting that way. And Noel's 2 votes are going that way. All he needs is 3. So it's happening whichever way he goes. Whichever way he goes, he's a swing vote, right? He could go James and Carla and vote out Owen, who he's closer with than James. So he saves his ally by going with Owen and Noel and voting out James. So obviously he's closer. So it was a good move for him. It really was because he's closer with Owen than he is with James. Carla is closer with James than she is with him. So, at least in theory, because we don't really know how all the relationships are. They seem like they were really close, but obviously him and Carla had a good relationship. Obviously, because she voted to get rid of James and work with Sammy. But again, he frees up Carla to obviously Cassidy, but also to work with him closer. Now, I don't think he knows that Carla's also working really well with Jesse, but regardless, he keeps his closer ally in the game, brings Carla closer to him as well. And not for nothing, but he could have just flipped on James, and that would have been the end of it, and really pissed off Carla, and then had damage control. But instead, he goes to Carla beforehand and says, look, there's nothing you can do to stop the vote. And he wasn't, like, rude about it. It wasn't, like, a jerk about it. He was just like, hey, look, there's really nothing you can do because I'm voting that way, Noel's voting that way, blah, 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 whatever. Owen, myself, and Noel are voting that way. Nothing you can do. But I don't want you out of the vote. I want you in the loop. And it could have blown up on him. They could have played an idol. Owen goes out, Noel goes out, whatever. He goes out, even. But they made the move, and it worked out. So, in fact, that he stuck with Carla, kept her going, kept her in the, kept her tight with him, instead of just flipping on them and pissing her off. He saved that relationship, in theory at least, by letting her know what was going on and bringing her in the loop and giving her the opportunity to vote with the majority. So, good move for him. Obviously, it could have been really, really blown up on him, but it didn't. And I see why he wanted to keep Owen over James. Again, James is part of the 7, where Owen isn't, but he's closer with Owen. So why work with the 7 that you're at the bottom of the 7? So don't love the fact that he flipped on his group, but again, make a new group with instead of a 7 at the final 8, make a 5 at the final 8. Obviously keep yourself in the majority, but you don't have to stick with the numbers, especially if you're at the bottom of the numbers. So good move by Sammy. I think Sammy had a really good week. Player of the week this week, obviously, she hasn't done a ton this season. We definitely wanted more out of her. I was definitely really hoping she'd give us a little more this season. But she made a big move this week, and it worked out in her favor. So I gotta give player of the week this week to Noel. Noel EG got the job done this week, and good for her. Made a nice move, took out a threat in the game, and added to her resume. Again, this was her move this week. It was a big move for her this week. Obviously, Sammy gets credit as well, and then the other tribal council didn't. It seemed like it was just pretty kind of like an easy vote, kind of a punt as opposed to a big move. So overall, very nicely done. I think everybody did a pretty good job, because it was all pretty much straightforward votes. The people who went out of the game unanimously. So it's kind of hard to pick, but I think obviously Noelle had the flashy move this week, and hasn't really done much this season. So I want to give her the credit that she deserved this week for the move she made. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss anything. You can like our Facebook page, Pavement Road Prod on Facebook. You can email the show directly, pavementroadproductions@gmail.com. Subscribe, share the post, tell your friends. We'll be back here in a few days. Obviously, we're getting this out. Looks like probably Wednesday or around that time. So we'll be back in a few days. The next episode airs tonight. We won't watch it live. Still a little behind, but we'll get that out in the next couple days, and then we'll be caught up. And the Amazing Race show will come out as well around the same time, probably over the weekend. Obviously, with the holiday, everything like that, we're going to be a little bit getting out a couple days later, but not as far behind as we could have been, thanks to the Amazing Race having a double episode. So, or a double, I guess, a mega leg, over the course of 2 episodes. So, we can just record once for that instead of having to do, anything else. So, awesome. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being part of the show. We'll be back soon with the next episode. Again, it's only a couple episodes left to the finale. We're getting close. There's only 3 weeks left for the show. So, and it makes sense because it's getting close to the end of the year. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being part of the show. Thanks for subscribing, sharing the post, telling your friends. And we'll be back very, very soon. And until next time, I got nothing else for you, because the tribe has spoken.